people.
Yes, absolutely.
And knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. The information that you share, the information that you are able to acquire and share with millions of people is very, very, very important in pushing for the change that we need to see.
And you need to remind the people that whilst power belongs to them, power is never given, power is taken. You contest for every blade of grass as a citizen, even against the machinery of the state.
And let the people say? Okay, thank you very much, Tony. So the last question goes to you, good diva. Trust me, you have the simplest question on the panel today. And it's as simple as, how is the legal context? How favorable is the legal context for... I mean, it's easy because you can answer it whichever way you want to answer it. How favorable is the legal context for the citizenry's demand for accountability? And this ranges from civil and political dimensions of demanding for accountability through the various art forms. How favorable is our legal context? Or unfavorable?
First of all, that's not an easy question at all, my friend. I was about to say I concur. I have nothing useful to add when I was listening to these ninjas speaking, because I feel like you made some very relevant points about, first of all, the idea of people power belonging to us, yeah. But I especially loved the point that Sister Dominic made about artists as creators and co-creators of the universe together with God. And co-creators of the universe together with God, Mungu, whatever you call the higher power that we believe in, yeah? So let me start by answering a bit of your question, then I'll come back to those ideas. So in terms of the legal context, I don't think that there is much that can be said about the badness or goodness of the legal context that we exist in for advocating for the rights and changes and holding our government accountable in the way that those of us who participate in progressive movements want to do, right? Because our constitution, which we were reminded by Sarah earlier, that is an adult now, our constitution is turning 30 years this year, already turned 30 years, yeah? Our constitution is very clear about certain rights and entitlements that we have as Ugandans, whether it's our civil and political rights, or, I mean, like, for example, the right to protest, the right to participate in an election. Those are civil and political rights. And then our economic, social, and cultural rights, things like the right to an education, the right to food, you know? So those things are very clearly delineated in our constitution. And our laws provide for the ways that we can participate in parliamentary processes and whatever. Those things exist. But then we come to the nitty-gritty of what does our government look like? What is the reason that we have to continuously be pushing for issues like good governance, the respect of human rights? I think that that's more relevant to the legal context that we exist in. The fact that our government, you know, now you can kill a person, but it's okay, we go. I feel like our government has consistently shown itself to be hostile to particularly certain progressive human rights issues that those of us who are artists, who are activists, and I like to speak to activists, and which is why I want to come back to that idea of artists as co-creators with God, yeah? Because I think that if you look at the Christian idea of the world created in God's image, I think that those of us who participate in our societies as activists, as artists, as people who are trying to get our voices heard, are trying essentially to create or recreate our societies in our own image, yeah? And that's a role that we have to take extremely seriously. But we also have to acknowledge that the legal and social climate that we find ourselves in is extremely hostile to the promotion or propagation of certain ideas that many of us as artists and activists feel would lead to a more fruitful existence for all of us in society. So for example, in Uganda, when you think of issues like women's human rights and the human rights of LGBTIQ people, these are issues for which, if we looked at the law in the black and white letter of the law, we should be able to advocate for reasonably and not have to face the challenges that we see activists experiencing of being arrested on the streets and being refused to attend meetings and things like that, yeah? So the legal environment is decidedly hostile to the propagation of certain ideas. Fuck the Anti-Homosexuality Act. And so I think that for those of us who are existing and participating in certain movements that challenge the status quo, it is absolutely urgent for us to be able to use every medium that we can to make the points that we want to do. And I think that that's where art becomes very relevant, yeah? And one of the reasons that I think that art is an especially potent tool for the propagation of unpopular movements, and as activists, really, we have to acknowledge, for those of us who are interested in living in a progressive society as Ugandans, we have to acknowledge that we are trying to proliferate unpopular ideas that the majority of our society, or at least the majority of people that have power in our society, do not want to see propagated, do not want to see these ideas become popular, to the extent that laws are being passed to stop certain principles from being respected in our society, right? And so we have to acknowledge that we are in opposition to our societies. We are literally in opposition to the law, because the law is being used to oppress us, yeah? And so we have to be creative in the ways that we attempt to circumvent the law, but also to change those laws, to create societies in which it becomes unnecessary to pass or enforce laws that lead to the oppression of certain elements in our society. And so let me just make one point, because this is a thing that I've been thinking about a lot in observing the growth of movements in Uganda, is the point that what I love about the expression that is allowed through art. So it's very difficult to infiltrate artists and the spaces that artists are doing their work, yeah? And that's a problem that we see in a lot of Ugandan movements for human rights and progressive rights have been infiltrated, whether it's by state, or basically, Afande, please. I don't know if anyone understands what I mean when I say Afande, please, but we know the Afandes amongst us and the Afandes in our movements, yeah, which have been infiltrated. And I think that it's very difficult to infiltrate the use of art as a medium for the promotion of progressive ideas. Because this ninja is in the studio with his two buddies. This person is painting and whatever, this person is using their art, writing their novel on their laptop at 4 a.m. in their house, yeah. It's quite difficult to infiltrate, and except of course for situations where we find ourselves scared and we self-censor. So I think that art is a very relevant tool, I think, in challenging and recreating the legal environment that we find ourselves in, that is often hostile to the expression of progressive ideas. And I hope that I've answered a bit of your question, yeah? And so just to say that artists and those of us who are activists as co-creators of our societies, we do have the responsibility of trying to recreate the world in our own image, regardless of the factors that exist that would otherwise stop us from doing that, including legal factors, yeah? So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have summed it up so well. In a nutshell, the law is an ass for those of us who are who are involved in progressive movements, and we should elevate the importance of art in creating the changes we want to see. Especially in light of the fact that some of the legal interventions we have tried to do, especially by going to court, have not yielded much. We are seeing a string of decisions coming from the Constitutional Court saying that, oh, well, the beliefs and ideals of the majority supersede your rights as a minority. So I think you make a very important point about how elevated art is in this moment, in our legal context, with regard to creating the social change that we want to see. And I think the takeaway for us here as artists, as various forms of artists, is how do we make that message louder? How do we make our message for inclusion much louder than, someone else's bigotry, for example? Thank you very much, my wonderful panelists. Please, but before you leave, any questions? 2 questions. Yes, we have a question.
Thank you, panelists. My name is Juliet. About 20 years ago, I was a student of Sister Dr. DPO Dominic in the School of Education, Makerere University, for my undergraduate. So I'm happy to be part of this event while you are speaking. And my question is motivated by your talk. You spoke about what I want to call the duality of the artist, being able to create art for social justice, but at the same time, being able to keep safe. In the context where we operate as artists, but also as art activists, as Godiva would love to call us, it's a very difficult terrain where striking that balance is very complicated. Because if you choose to say, I want to create art for social justice, but at the same time, I want to keep safe, I think you're kind of, in my opinion, I don't know, you're putting yourself in a space where you'll fail at either, no matter what you do, no matter how much you try. I feel like as an artist, we have an obligation, a responsibility to create art and let it transcend space, but also transcend ideas, and then allow for whatever audience we are targeting to interpret, but at the same time, make use of in relation to the social justice that we are aiming at. So to speak, I don't think that some level of censorship, self-censorship in that case, can help us articulate our issues in ways that we should. If we want to choose a struggle to be activists, I think our bodies should be on the line. And so if we choose to have our bodies on the line, we cannot, in my opinion, afford to self-censure. Because when we do that, then we can't speak to power in ways that we want to speak to power. So I don't know how you, as an artist, I know you as a filmmaker, beyond knowing you as a lecturer, I know you as a filmmaker. How do you strike that balance of, I'm an artist who has this social problem that must be put to test for the law to act in the favor of those that are disadvantaged, in the favor of those that are vulnerable, and at the same time strike that balance of having that duality, luxury, of keeping safe. Thank you.
Can I answer?
Maybe let's just take the second and last question, if at all, such that they can be addressed all at once.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panel. Very wonderful and enlightening. So.